3.3 Jacob Tupper. This presentation will be on stress, anxiety and arousal in sport. And throughout this presentation, we'll be looking at two scenarios. So the first one being badminton. And to summarise quickly, Nick represents his college for his badminton team, yet he struggles to apply his tactics he learns in this game, and therefore his whole performance falls apart. And instantly, he's also a grade student, but worries about his grades. Now, looking at stress first, two definitions for stress here. Stress can be defined as a pattern of negative physiological states and psychological responses occurring in situations where people perceive threats to their well-being, which they may be unable to meet, found by Lazarus and Folkman, 1984. And another definition of stress is that stress is generally discussed in relation to an imbalance between the demands of the situation encountered by an individual and the perceived ability to cope or adjust to these demands, Lazarus, 1991. Now you can see in both these definitions of stress that they have common themes and specific words, one being the word perceive. So you can see that stress overall is how a person perceives a certain situation. So this could differ between people. So one person could perceive a situation as not being stressful, whereas another person would perceive this situation being stressful. Another theme that comes up in this is the word negative here, and although the word isn't used here, it's suggested here as well. So it suggests stress is a negative thing to a person. However, it isn't always negative, with eustress actually having a benefit to a person's performance, or it's believed to have a benefit to a person's performance, but obviously distress then would have a negative effect to someone's performance. You have 6 major categories to which can describe potential stresses. So these include the sports environment, lifestyle factors, personal life, occupational factors, internal factors and external factors. And you can see with Nick being the number 2 seed in college, representing his college, this is puts a lot of pressure on him to do well because he's representing the entire college, and this would be put under the sports environment. So this pressure of him having to live up to what he's representing, in this case being his college, this can put a lot of stress on him. Also, his new coach is trying to reassure him and saying how good he should be doing. And for Nick, this would make him feel like he would not be doing the best of his abilities, as his coach is trying to tell him how well he should be doing, and obviously not is doing at the moment. So this could also be another sports environment with his coach adding extra pressure and therefore stress onto this. And you also have in his own life, so this could be occupational in a way, as all personal life, because occupational for him is he's a student, and in his personal life he's spending hours doing homework because he's stressing about his grades, because he stresses that he will not be good enough even though he is an A-grade student. There are different types of symptoms of stress here. So for somatic, this would be your physiological types of stress. So obviously an increased metabolism, even though it's not very related to Nick, is potential that could happen to him. You have an increase in muscle tension, and this would mean that he suggests that he would struggle to play the more precise and accurate shots due to that increase in muscle tension, which is why he's struggling in his games. And he also can possibly feel nauseous, which here in the scenario it says which he is. So, and that is obviously having a negative effect on him. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing here. It's just how he perceives it being a bad thing. It's how you perceive your physiological changes, which would cause stress or not cause stress. Your second category would be cognitive, and this is your psychological effects or symptoms of stress here. So you have lack of concentration and more likely to make mistakes. And the more likely to make mistakes is can be or is likely to be due to this lack of concentration. So where it could also be that as he's struggling to play those more precise and accurate shots, this could be because of his lack of concentration, meaning that he's making more mistakes. And it could also potentially mean how his performance is falling apart because he's losing concentration because he's so stressed, and in this case distressed, of overstressed, so that he doesn't perform well. And looking at this graph, you can see that as your stress increases to a point here, looking at eustress, your performance also increases. But then after this optimum point, your performance starts to decrease again. And obviously Nick is clearly in this area of distress as he's feeling nauseous before games, so he's obviously worrying so much about his game. Now looking at anxiety, you can see that it's good to clear up first that stress is a response to something that will happen in the future, whereas anxiety is a response to something that will possibly happen in the future, so isn't always guaranteed to happen. And the definition of anxiety here is that anxiety is a negative state of worry, apprehension, or tension that often occurs in the absence of real or obvious danger. Typically, the tension felt by anxious individuals is accompanied by a heightened state of physiological arousal. Buckwork and Dishman, 2002. So you can see here that anxiety is always negative. So whereas stress, you had eustress, which would benefit performance here. This definition here is saying that anxiety is always negative to the performer. And this could be through multiple things. So everyone's different. So Nick here obviously is more likely to be more anxious than other people, and we'll go into that next. So looking at trait anxiety, it's a type of anxiety and where Nick is likely to fall into this category. Trait anxiety is where the person is likely to be worried in a variety of situations easily, and it is believed that the person has an inbuilt likelihood to worry. So, and this is evident here where in the scenario 1 it says instantly he is an A-grade student but constantly worries about his grades and spends hours doing homework, which shows that because he's worrying about his grades, he has anxiety about not getting high grades. Even though he's an A-grade student, he's still worrying about not doing well enough. This also means that the person is believed to easily become highly aroused, and that they're believed to easily feel threatened in potentially non-threatening situations. To summarise this, the factors affecting anxiety here is that the personal factors combined with the situational factors result in anxiety and arousal, and this could either increase or decrease. So if the person, like Nick, who has trait anxiety or is believed to have trait anxiety, he's more likely to have an increased arousal as he personally stresses out or is anxious about situations that most people would respond to situations which aren't as threatening or dangerous that result in anxiety. But as Nick has trait anxiety, he will respond to this in a different way, meaning that he's more likely to have an increase in anxiety and arousal. Looking at the Izov theory by Hannon, 1986, they suggested that an optimal level of arousal is a band on a continuum rather than a set point. So different people have different sections or different band in which they would perform their best to their abilities, depending on their anxiety levels. So for an athlete to be in their optimum band, they must feel confident and in control of their actions. So Nick here, for example, if he's feeling nauseous before games and can't concentrate, and he's a person that's likely to be have a high state of anxiety, then really for him his best performance would be in a lower anxiety state where he has lower anxiety and is more calmer, for him to make those more precise shots and him to ultimately win his games. and because his anxiety before the games and stress is so high, he's out of his optimum zone, meaning that his performance then wouldn't be as good as it possibly can be.